I get like closer to it, the more it's like things are just doing different stuff. I'm healing different. I'm getting more.
Convene. Commissioner Baxter.
Just going to be through July 31st, and the hours are going to be cut back from 32 to 16. But now that we have a temporary interim assistant town manager, I'm assuming that they will be able to pick up on some of those duties that you would be, of course, letting go since you'd be scaling back. As far as the positions that we are actively seeking and are going through the hiring process for, I do think that this is something that our future permanent town manager needs to be a part of those hiring decisions. So I just want to make sure that that is also what you are thinking as far as what your duties will be.
Thank you. Good questions. So, Interim Assistant Town Manager Chris Ray and I will have weekly meetings to make sure that there's no gap in communication between this town manager's office and the board, as well as being responsive to employees' requests, and just make sure that everything keeps going the way they're supposed to be, because he's going to be here physically all of the time. There are two positions, of course, as you know, that the board is responsible for, that totally out of the scope of the manager. That's the town clerk and the town manager. But what we've been doing is to help set you up to get you in that place. And I think one of the agenda items tonight is to present to you multiple firms that have expressed interest in the town manager position. If you choose to go with one of them or none of them, then we'll know what to do at that point in time. If you choose to go with one of them, then the conversation will be with that firm as to how you want to proceed. The town clerk, we've kind of looked at the list that we provided to you, but also a number of names that you have shared with us. Last week, we spent about 4 days. When I said we, myself and the HR director, Ms. Lisa Markland, kind of went through the list. Some of them did not call back, either because they found another job or they're no longer interested. But we were able to at least identify a number of candidates that we will be sharing with you later on tonight. And that's a decision that's outside the scope of the interim manager. But the goal is to help you get to that point. And if you choose none of those, that's again, you have to go back out. With regards to the IT director, that's within the scope of the interim director, and you are already within the scope of the manager. Now, you've been going through that for a while. And when I spoke with the recruiter today, a number of those candidates have also not been calling back because they've already secured a job. As you know, the IT position is one that's very hard to fill. So the direction I gave to them is to go ahead and let us screen at least up to 6 of the remaining candidates that are very qualified, that we feel that we can go with. An organization of about 90 full-time or so employees, you definitely can't afford to not have an IT person in time. I'm not sure you want to wait for a long-term manager to make that decision because it's already in the market. And like I said earlier, with regards to the assistant town manager long-term, it's also my desire, frankly speaking, that the long-term manager is involved in that decision. But we can help shepherd you to a point where you have a number of candidates that we feel are qualified and suitable. And then we have to decide what that milestone is, where we put a pause on it or a pin on it and wait for a manager to be in here. That could be costly to a degree in terms of, even as at now, there are some that are maybe pulling out of the running. But I also think you will still be able to get good candidates if they know who they're going to be reporting to. So I truly believe that the town manager, future manager, should be involved in that process. And so I'm glad we have interim assistant town manager, Chris Ray, to help shepherd and guide us. When we get towards the end of July, and if you feel like, I still bring some value to what the town wants to do, we can consider that at that point in time if you still do not have the candidates that you need.
All right, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Davis?
The only question I had, with the 16 hours, will you be able to be here for any of those? Will you be here physically, or will that be virtually? What does that look like?
The plan is for me to still be here on the Tuesdays, preferably when you have board meetings or work sessions like tonight.
It was Tuesdays.
Yes.
Most of our meetings are on Mondays.
If it's not on Tuesdays, if there's another day, maybe on Monday,
Mondays.
then we'll be flexible enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Usually, typically, our meetings are on Mondays.
Typically on Mondays, yeah.
Hopefully none in July.
Commissioner Clark?
None at this time.
Commissioner Harrison?
No, sir.
Commissioner Miles?
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Baxter?
I've asked mine, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So we would need a motion to adopt that, the amendment to the interim manager's contract, which includes a reduction in hours 2 to 16.
I make a motion we adopt the agreement for employment as interim town manager.
Second.
We have a motion. Second, thank you, Commissioner Miles.
Do we have to word it as the amendment, or just saying agreement is fine?
It's fine to call it the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions from the board? comments? Roll vote. Commissioner Davis,
Favor.
Commissioner Clark,
Favor?
Commissioner Harris,
Favor.
Commissioner Miles,
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
We can't quite hear you, Todd. Your
Oh,
mic-
thank you.
Okay.
Next is the executive search firm.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that this is something that's very important to the board and to this town, but as well as our staff. And so over the last couple of weeks, we've solicited, firms, executive recruiters who might be interested in actually helping us with regards to the next hiring. And so we received 3 proposals. Those proposals are attached to the report that you have, one from Polyhire. Polyhire is based out of DC, but they are certified in North Carolina. Good Hope Works is based out of Charlotte, but they're also certified in the state, of course. Baker Tilly is national. They do this work all over the country, and all 3 firms have done work in North Carolina. Baker Tilly recently did the recruitment for the town of Carrboro and placed their manager, who happens to be a good friend. Good Hope Works did not specify their experience or where they've placed people in North Carolina, but they did indicate that they have experience placing managers and assistant managers, but did not really specify which particular municipality. Polyhire has recently placed the town manager for Chapel Hill and the city manager for Rocky Mount, and they've also placed managers for 2 towns in Virginia. On the second page of the staff report is kind of like a table that shows the breakdown of their schedule and cost. When you look at it, it seems like 90 to 120 days is roughly what they can do, but the cost is within $3,000 to $4,000 difference. That's the reason I'm actually recommending that you will approve the interim town manager to enter into contract negotiations with Polyhire. One, because I believe that they have done extensive work with the 2 recent managers that they placed in Chapel Hill, as well as in Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount, of course, being very close to us here. Originally their dollar amount was significantly higher. I reached out to them. But they've always proposed 12 weeks as the time when they could get someone in here. That's roughly 90 days, but I also, in my conversation with them, they could expedite that based on the board's decision. Good Hope Works also says about 90 days, but again, they haven't specified where they've done work, who they've placed. I know how important this position is, and so if the board decides that they don't want to go with the interim town manager's recommendation, we can definitely enter into conversations with the other 2 and come back again. But I also believe, based on what I've had tonight and based on what I've heard from each one of you, the time is of essence also in getting someone here who can lead our city into its future. So again, that's my recommendation, that we enter into contract negotiations with Polyhire. And if that doesn't work, then we go to Baker Tilly or go to Good Hope Works. Thank you.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter.
And so when it comes to the start dates to get rolling on this process, it does look like Good Hope Works is not available until July 8th. And I do think that this is kind of, it's emergent for us to start this process sooner rather than later. And so was there any difference between Polyhire and Baker Tilly as far as when they would be able to begin the entire process?
I think if you ask any one of them, they will tell you they can start yesterday. But I also have to be realistic. So I have spoken to a couple of them, and they are ready to go, but they may have to just move things around their schedule. So I mean, consultants can make anything work. I'm more interested in if they have a bandwidth to expedite our own process than anything else. Polyhire did tell me that they can do that. They can expedite our process, and they can customize their schedule to fit what we envision.
Ty, what, I don't think I heard you if you said it. Where is Baker Tilly based out of?
You know, I don't really know where they're based out of, but I believe it's Texas.
Okay.
But they're a national firm, and they've done work all over the country. They're well known. Their most recent work was in Carborough, but that was the only one that I could find. I mean, they have a number of assistants, town managers, just like Polyhire, but I wanted to zone in on town manager experience that's relevant to what we're seeking.
Thank you.
Davis?
I didn't get to read all the way through, but it was my understanding one of them, and I think it was the Polyhire, is offering it if it does not work out for the town manager. Was it 1 year time frame?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
So both Polyhire and actually I think Baker Tilly also has that provision too, that they do have some caveats, of course. But within 1 year of appointment, if the selected candidate is terminated for cause, or if they choose to terminate their own appointment, they will conduct a new recruitment for us without charging us, except for a couple things, such as maybe advertising and things like that, which are not really that expensive. But other things, such as professional services like they're providing here, they will do that without charging. Baker Tilly said the same thing, but they had some caveats to what they would do, such as if someone turns down the appointment, for example, within 1 year, and you choose to hire someone from within and using their services, they may charge for that. So there's some caveats to everyone. But the 12-month guarantee, I think it's a good thing, frankly speaking, for both of them. I didn't see that on Good Hope Works.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Clark?
With the application, do we get to do the job description?
Yes. So if you recall, I think 2 weeks ago, I emailed you kind of a list of profile based on what you chatted with me about. We will make that available to whoever you select here, but they will also have conversations with each one of you and as a group. In fact, I think that's in every one of these proposals, that the first thing they want to do is to sit down with you or to develop a profile of who you want as the next time.
Because I thought that the application or the description needed to be more specific.
Absolutely, I do agree with you. It has to be specific. So even for the benefit of the candidates, so they know exactly where they're headed. One of the things that makes us an attractive town, in my opinion, is we're the fastest growing municipality in the state. I think that counts for something. And there are a number of town managers who just want to be there to do that. And so I think in having conversation with whoever you ultimately decide we go with, they will have a conversation with you as to who you want, then they will put a draft description together, share that with you, and then you get that back to them, and then the process continues from there.
Well, for me, sorry.
Commissioner Davis? Baxter.
For me, looking through Polyhire's profile and the work that they've done in the state of North Carolina, I feel like this would probably be the choice that makes the most sense, just because Good Hopes did not share as much information, so I don't really understand what their track record is. I'm sure that they have one, but in order for us to start moving forward, I think that knowing that we have municipalities very close to us that have been able to successfully identify and hire candidates is important.
Commissioner Miles?
Yeah, I agree. Poly hire is kind of what I'm looking at. After looking at all the profiles, I do agree with that.
Commissioner Harrison?
Yep, I agree. I was actually leaning towards poly hire myself.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
I'm in agreement with that as well. Like I said, I like the clause that they had. If something doesn't work out within 1 year, they'll provide their services once again. So
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic? I cannot
sorry
hear
about
you.
that. I said, yes, I agree with them as well. They had me, I like it, the clause that if we were to separate from that next town manager within a year, that they would provide services without, with free of charge.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to direct the town manager to enter into negotiations with, I'm assuming, Poly Air?
I'd like to make a motion for us to enter into a contract with Polyhire to help us in our search for our town manager.
That was a motion.
That was my motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments? We have a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter.
In favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ty.
Next, FY25 budget. Ty?
Mayor, I'm going to ask Budget Officer to join me here as we go into this work session. And I sent an email out to you earlier today in preparation for today. And I believe that we addressed everything you wanted us to address from the last time, and more. If I could add it that way, because there were some things you did not discuss that we came up with, and that was because I had further conversations with staff to make sure that we were presenting close enough budget to you. So what you see in the spreadsheet that we adjusted, I believe, I don't know if you have a copy. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So as the hard copies go around, that's this email that was sent is on one side, and then the spreadsheet is on another. Last week when we met, you wanted us to remove the admin assistant position from the budget. We did that. To remove the pedestrian bridge cost, we did that. To remove the town hall and police department reorganization at 280,000, we did that. 2 cubicles at 15,000. Now, maybe that's a point of confusion. I also had assumed that it was a cubicle at 6,000 or 7,000 each, not 15,000, but maybe I was wrong. So we can have a conversation around that. So again, these numbers, we can definitely amend them. In speaking with our staff as well, I understand we have that space across the human resources suite on the second floor that we could actually renovate to place some of the cubicles. So instead of us just putting those cubicles in parts of the building today where there's already no space, there could be space in there. The cost of renovating that is not significant as much in terms of not just renovating that, but also having some container facility where we could put old cabinets and storage and just put them in there and make space for cubicles to be. Could be roughly 50,000. We did not discuss that last time, but that's something that I wanted to bring forth to you. And, again, it's your budget. You can say yay or nay, but I just wanted to bring that to you. We still keep the splash pad, but you will notice a reduction. And the reason for that is if we were to go with what was called option 6 or 5A or something like that last time, which is 10%, 3%, 5%, what that did is, what I would do rather is to create compression. And that compression could easily be about $300,000 or so. Because if we were to award 10% focused pay increase to police, fire, and public works, 3% to every other employee, and 5% merit, what we end up having is a deputy chief that makes more money than the police chief. But we also have a few fire officers and police officers who will actually be making more than our department heads. That was something that didn't factor into our conversation last week, and I understand that. But the way I also understand compression is that if you don't deal with it, it just gets worse. Not only is the gap worse in terms of manager, staff, but the dollar amount to address it also becomes significant. In my last tenure, I spent $1.8 million addressing compression. And that's because we want to do what is right by our employees, but in the process, there may be unintended consequences. And so one of that could easily be that. Looking for that 300,000 was to look at the potential for taking some of that from the splash pad. And that's why that number went down to just a little over $1 million. We still kept the dugout shades, the Jill Street Park, the parade cost, everything stays the way you had approved them. But one thing that we've got to factor into this also is that the 10% pay increase to police, fire, and public works, and the 3% to every employee, as well as the 5% merit, will cost $327,000. That's your tax rate. That's really what takes your tax rate to about 58 or something. And in the process, though, we still have to do a pay equity and pay adjustment. Because even after you've done that, even at 10%, there will still be employees who are below market. There will still be some pay bands that are narrower than others. And if you want to be an employer of choice in Zebulon, we have to take the plunge and just say, let's assess where our pay is compared to our peer cities or towns. Where are we from top to bottom? You can address compression today and all you want, but it's a one-time deal. But if we go ahead and bring someone here either to dust up an old equity or pay adjustment study that was done or to do a completely new one, we can come back to you before the next fiscal year budget and say, this is the recommendation. But I also, I'm not elected, but I also know that, this may be your year to start talking about tax rate increase, not next year. And if you're going to do something, then maybe this is the opportunity to do it. And I will say this before I stop and yield to a budget officer. If you give 10% across board to every employee, let's assume that you do that, just if you stay with me for a minute, the cost of that will be roughly about $600,000 and some, and you will not have to deal with compression right now. I wouldn't have to be talking about taking $300,000 out of the splash pad. I think if you combine that $327,000 of that focused pay and the $300,000 that may be taken out of splash pad, that still takes you to about $600,000 and some anyway. And so if you want to achieve pay equity across the board, and you also want to be able to say that we're an employer of choice by improving how we pay our employees and how we make sure that those positions are competitive enough to attract really good candidates, I'll say this is your opportunity to do it. I'm not going to say to the board how much you want to increase the tax rate by. If you did that, that will be about 60 cents. But if you do what you proposed last week, that will keep you at 58 and 80 cents. But it will still result in us taking some money to address compression. Basically, that's it. So I just wanted to run through that, and then, I don't know, Bobby, if I captured it well or if I missed anything.
I think that's everything.
Oh. Thank you. We're happy to answer questions. Again, some of these just came to me as I was asking questions. So the numbers could be wrong with regards to cubicles. The reno may not be something you want to do. That's fine, but I will not be doing the right thing if I'm not presenting everything that I know in front of you to support or to disagree with. Thank you.
Questions, comments from the board?
Yes.
Commissioner Baxter?
I believe that Ms. Markland has a clarification to some statements that she made at our last meeting about merit increases, perhaps?
Sure, be more than happy to.
Great.
I had sent out to the board that the merit increases have been 5% for the last 3 years, and I'm drawing from memory, I think it was 3% for 2021 and 20, and I think there's 4% for several years in there as well, and I went back to 2015.
Thanks. So I just wanted to make sure that that clarification was noted, that we have not been at 10% merit for the past 10 years.
It was 5%.
5%.
See, look at, even here I go.
Got it? It's okay.
But,
We all.
well, we definitely haven't been at 10% for the past
Thank God, we be close.
But you've been at
we
5.
also haven't been at 5%, so.
Except for the last 3 years.
Yep. But it's just important for us to be getting accurate information, and sometimes when we get stuff in an email, it helps the board understand, but we just want to make sure that the rest of the community at large has an understanding when a mistake is made, so that we can move forward all with the same information. I personally am not thinking that moving forward with the $50,000 second floor renovation at this time is something that we should be pursuing. I think that in the future, once our next town manager is hired, that can be something that they can evaluate to make sure that that is the best use of that space. We do have an awful lot of items that have been stored there for many years. A lot of those things are historical based, that we have been warehousing for either past members of the school or folks that have historical items just from the town in general. And we really need to think about how we're going to be warehousing those items, if it is the town's desire to continue to warehouse those items, and then what we're going to be doing with that, because that is taking up space in that area. And so before we move forward with any kind of renovation of a cubicle, I think that we need to address that. And then renovation of a space. Talking about the cubicles, I think that there was some misunderstanding. And
So it's a total of 15,000.
the total will be $15,000, so that additional $15,000 would be removed from the email that we received earlier. Then we're removing the pedestrian bridge for this time. I believe that at some point that can come back before us for further discussion as the space down at the end of Barbie Street gets built out and some of those Parks and Rec impact fees start to come in. That might be something adding additional access may qualify as a reason for us to be able to dip into the Parks and Rec impact fees to pay for a bridge if that's the route that we decide to go in the future. We had a question about housing infrastructure that was on the inside of the budget, that if Mr. Clark would come up and just run us through that so that everyone is receiving the same information that you gave to us about the housing infrastructure money that is inside the budget.
Yes, within the capital budget, you'll find two line items. The first, and Commissioner Baxter and Commissioner Miles asked me about this right before the meeting. There's one item that is a housing study. That is to evaluate the existing market that we're in, the needs of the community, and to make recommendations on the best way to expand and improve the affordable housing quality and stock that we have here in town, as well as to address any other deficiencies such as potentially executive housing. The spirit and intent is really to address both the affordable housing and to create a very broad spectrum to make sure that we're providing for housing for everybody. The second line item is a housing infrastructure infrastructure improvement program. This is based on a program that is currently in operation up in Wake Forest, where the town partners with a third-party vendor when there's deficiencies in either the HVAC system, plumbing systems. It allows for discounted services for replacement, sometimes free replacement of these items for a more energy efficient, or in some cases just operational, mostly a trades type improvement to those structures. There are income maximums that would be applied. Specifically, they would have to meet the HUD definition of affordable housing to be eligible for those programs.
The HUD definition and not an income definition.
Well, the HUD definition is an income
definition.
definition. It is based on 80% of regional AMI.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure that I had an understanding of what that was.
In speaking with Mr. Clark, one of the things I brought to his attention, I would like somehow, with those funds, if approved, that we can bring in our Eastern Regional Center and tie that in, because that is some of the areas where those people that are needing those funds are going to receive funds. So I don't know how and if we could, what that would look like, but I want to ensure that at least before we start spending those funds, that we bring in the Eastern Regional Center.
Yeah, we could absolutely
program.
do that.
And those guys, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Davis?
I'm sorry, let me make sure. Are we talking about what Commissioner Baxter has just presented, or just overall?
Overall.
Because I wanted to discuss more about the splash pad and gain further understanding. You know, originally this was a $1.4 million. I understand we dropped it down, where's the number for me? 1,010,000. With discussion of budget, compression, taxes, all that, what does it look like wiping that fund out completely and not doing a splash pad?
But you correct me, right? Even if we were to take out 300,000 to address compression, it's a one-time thing. We're still going to have to come back at some point after a pay adjustment study is done to still get our employees to where they need to go. It's very hot outside. I want a splash pad, I know. But I also understand that it may not be priority, and so we think that we may be flexible with 50% of it, not necessarily everything. However, even if we did that now, we will still have to come back at some point to still address compression, pay differentials, right?
So taking it completely out doesn't change the factors at all?
No.
1,010,000 doesn't affect us at all?
I don't know what we do with all of that to address compression. If you're thinking of addressing compression over multiple years.
I'm thinking about freeing up that amount of money. That's a significant amount of money.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at.
So, but if we free it up, maybe that's more than you need to address compression.
Right, that's what she's saying. That's what we're saying.
asking that. Rather than using those funds towards a splash pad, using those towards salary.
The entire thing?
Correct.
Again, it will still be a one-time thing.
Yeah, but she's still
Yeah.
saying free those funds up
We can, yeah, we can
and
do
then
that.
come back and say potentially come back and look at the
right.
splash pad later on? Or please?
I would love for us to move forward with some of our Parks and Rec initiatives, especially the ones that we are addressing in our Parks and Rec master plan. However, I do understand and take full responsibility that this was a Shannon Baxter-led idea, and maybe it was not the right time for us to be discussing entering into the build-out of a splash pad. Should we discuss it further? Yes. Do I think that it's important for our community? Absolutely. Is right now the time for us to do it? Perhaps not. So if we take it out of the budget right now, once the permanent manager comes into position and has a time to evaluate what the Parks and Rec needs are and what it might take to actually start moving forward with that program, that might be better for us overall, so that we're not dedicating funds to something that seems like it's got some complexities involved with it until we understand it more. So my thought is that maybe we just remove it in its entirety, let the funds go back into general fund, where they will be available to us in the future if we decide to dedicate what I thought originally was going to be funding just to start the process. You know, that's why I said maybe we should earmark the $400,000 to start the process for the analysis and not dedicate all of the funds for the entire build out, knowing that it's going to be a multiple year project. But if it is better for us, and it sounds like it might be at this point for us to remove it and then come back later once the full-time manager is in place to have some further discussions about what that might mean, I think that maybe that would be prudent.
Any further, Commissioner Clark?
Is there a way that you could pull aside some for the design of it?
Well,
It
that's
wouldn't
why I
cost
said
as
the
much.
original 400,000, Bev, remember? And then we just got the ideas for all of it, but that's what I was originally thinking.
Sheila, do you have any idea what it would cost to design it?
First, I want to preface this by, we didn't have the time to do like a full site plan or a feasibility study for a splash pad at Whitley Park to understand a more accurate cost estimate. So this is based off of information that we've pulled from our master plan, but also from others, communities that have recently built a splash pad and some of the support amenities. And so we estimated that the design would be $270,000. And that's just based off of some of the initial research that we did. I think that the challenge that we're going to run into, and just me going off and say, I need a design for a splash pad, is that there's a lot of discussion that you would need to be able to have in a feasibility study for a splash pad, doing some public engagement, one with the community on placing that at Whitley Park, but also what are our plans and how we operate it, because there are going to be operational impacts to adding a splash pad. And there are things we've not talked about that would go into your design. Are you going to have a staffed splash pad, or are you not going to have a staffed splash pad? Are you going to have concessions? Is it going to be gated where you have to pay a fee to enter? Do you have to be a member of it? There are a lot of things that we have not discussed that need to be taken into consideration before I can go out on the street to get designs, because those are answers that I have to have before we can do that. So there are some conversations that we really need to have in order to go out for that design. We could put a little bit more in that design fund and go work with one firm that can help us do that public engagement and that feasibility in addition to doing designs. But we're doing the best we can to provide you the numbers with the time and the information we have available to us now.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awful lot.
Yep.
I think that kind of, for me, solidified that maybe we just pull it out in its entirety and address it once we have a full-time manager. Then we can discuss what the overall far-reaching ramifications might be. So thank you, Sheila.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Is that a
Does that sound
concession?
like an idea for everyone?
That's what I
Pull
wanted
that.
to do.
For me, I'm good.
Okay.
So what you're saying is pull it out of the capital funds and pull it into operating funds?
No,
Or just leave
put it
it,
in,
just
in general
totally leave it
fund,
alone?
like instead of dedicating it
Okay,
any place, let's pull that out and let's put that back into general
okay.
fund.
But not use it for anything?
Correct.
Just, okay, all right, good. And let the long-term manager make that decision with the board? Okay.
In talking about our attempts to really make sure that we have our emergency services and our infrastructure maintenance services dialed in salary-wise. I do think that we need to make sure that we do not cause a compression situation for the directors at the top tiers. I think that is absolutely something that we need to consider. And so I am fine with increasing the pay to the managers in the fire department, the police department, and the public works department, all to 10%. I think that would make sure that they, as well as the employees that we are also giving 10% to, are all increased at the same rate. I think that when our full-time manager comes on board, then we can revisit what that would mean to the remaining directors. I am fine with giving them the 3% that was originally in the budget for all employees. Thoughts?
I'm sorry, can you summarize, what is it you're asking?
Initially, we had said that those at the director level would not be receiving the same increase.
Correct.
But that was, at least for me, not having all of the information and realizing that it would cause compression to the very top tiers of the people in those departments. And so I'd like to make sure that certainly that we don't have an officer making more than the chief. And so by increasing everyone by 10%, that is going to more adequately address that situation. And hopefully when the next manager comes in and we have the pay study completed, we'll be able to get an idea of what the additional needs are to kind of address compression across the remainder of our staff.
So if I can speak. So the compression will not only affect the managers in police, fire, and public works, it will be a town-wide impact. And so you're going to have a captain in police, in the police or fire department who makes more money than a director in another department, not necessarily in police, fire, and public works. So I actually think, while I applaud what you're proposing, I actually think it makes it even worse, because then it creates inequity between department heads.
Go back to 5%.
And I do get the notion of waiting for a town manager to come, but by then you will have passed the budget, and that town manager will be scrambling, coming to you to figure out how to find the funds to address the compression that might have been caused. And so, I mean, I could decide to step back and let the next town manager handle it, but that will not be right. I think you have an opportunity to do something for your staff. And frankly speaking, not just for your staff, but for the positions that they occupy. Because even if a staff person leaves that position, attracting quality people into those positions at the pay that we currently have will be challenging. So something to really think about. What you're proposing may make the compression worse, but it doesn't get rid of the situations that I don't believe that you want a situation where your department heads feel that they are not comfortable collaborating with one another because 10%, 3%, you know, just something to really, really strongly reconsider is what I would say. If you focus 10% on managers in those three departments alone, it will make the situation even a bit worse. Probably will cost us more, because what happens then is that the gap between those department heads and the other department heads will widen. And that's not something I believe you want to do. And even a pay equity or pay adjustment study will end up revealing that to us. And if a new manager gets in August or September, they will have to come back to the board and be talking about how they find the funds to address those.
So what do we let the new manager? I still say we let the new manager come in and assess that situation. For me, I hear what you're saying and respect it completely, but I think somebody needs that as a totality, somebody that's permanently here, that's going to be assessing it all the way around and looking at all moving parts. I know you're doing that now, but coming in September, we come back and give that assessment and give that to that person to come in and really assess what they're working with and what they're dealing with on a level and move forward like that, where they can make that decision.
May I speak? I think you've got to think of everybody, not just the fire, not those, just the three. You have got to hit the rest of the staff. I think the rest of the staff, I think here it said, y'all had talked about 3% for all employees and a 5% merit for all employees. And I think that's how you need to go. You can't leave them out. It's just not, it's not fair.
Any other comments?
I'm not comfortable with that. And I think if that's going to be the case, then suppose we just go back to what was originally recommended, except with the 5% going to the Public Works Department instead of the Planning Department.
So,
But I don't feel comfortable with that.
who's the original?
I know that there are severe employment and retention challenges in the fire department, public works, and the police department. And the salary study will make recommendations for how we can fund and move forward with the remainder of staff.
So you're saying just the Public Works Department? You didn't mention the other, the fire, police, and Public Works get the raises.
No, I'm not saying that at all. That's not what I ever said. I'm just saying that their raises are different because we need to bring them up to a point where we are not compressing their salaries any further, but we are also allowing the starting salaries to be raised enough to be able to fill those positions. Because right now, I'm sorry, there is no reason for us to be adding additional fire or police department positions. We have 4 of them that we can't fill right now. That's problematic, and we can't fill them because their pay compression has not been adequately addressed. And we have 3 fire positions that need to be filled. And it is a very competitive market right now, but we need to make sure that our town remains safe. We absolutely need to have someone doing the fire admin position. Those guys are overworked and they need the extra help. And in order to do that, they need to be able to find someone. We have a stormwater position that we cannot not fill. That has to happen. And we absolutely need a project manager. Do I feel that the other jobs are important? Yes, but I will absolutely let the other 3 police department positions wait until the next town manager comes on board to reevaluate, because we need to get those 4 positions that currently have been unfilled for a very long period of time filled, so that we are not running at minimum staffing levels on our streets. We hear and we see emergency vehicles run so much more frequently now than they have even 6 months ago. We are asking so much more of our emergency personnel than ever before. And these are people that are answering domestic violence calls. They are answering traumatic vehicle accidents, house fires, and when it comes to public works, these are the folks that work 7 days a week and get phone calls. And I have seen people that work not on a crew, but just as support staff out there with shovels when we have had emergencies. And when we talk about the positions that I need to make sure that we have and that are staffed and that are not compressed, for me, we need to make sure that those are the folks that are keeping our town safe right now. And in a couple months, when we have a salary study done and we have an understanding of how we can deal with compression, then the new town manager, we can work on where are those funds coming from and what steps can we make even mid-year to address a situation that right now is kind of emergent.
So if I'm hearing correctly, Chief Boykin is here, and she probably can explain this better if she is. Okay, all right. The reason we're talking about increasing starting salaries is so that we can fill some of those positions.
Correct.
I'm not a pay expert, but I do know that anytime you touch starting salary, it has ripple effects on everyone in the organization.
Which is why we're saying that we're going to be doing
the pay
the pay increase, which is more than, say, in finance, because we need to address the compression that happens when we increase the starting salary for some of these positions that we absolutely have to get filled.
And that we cannot fill.
And that we have had trouble filling. And so I feel like I have my thoughts, my ideas, my recommendations as to how this needs to move forward for us. And surely, as soon as we get another manager on board, we can have conversations to make sure that we address everything. I want our town to be a town that people want to send in an application for. But I also want to make sure that if someone's house is on fire, we're not having to wait for the fire chief or the fire marshal to roll into town because there's another emergency someplace else and they've got to drive a truck. And that's kind of what happens now.
Mayor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you. Chris Ray, is he here? Could you tell me about your hiring practices for public works? Do you see a long-standing or long list of positions that are hard to fill in your area?
Clearly, it's competitive with the construction market booming in Wake County. So our operators are competing with operators for construction companies. There is a challenge out there with CDL drivers, so they're very attractive. I will tell you the last three out of the last four positions that I've hired, we've had to adjust salary adjustments in our department because our entry level starting salary was not enough.
Okay. And do you currently have any positions in your department right now that are not filled?
No, ma'am. We actually, the construction closeout coordinator will be starting this Thursday.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make a quick statement to our entire staff that in no way do I think that everything that you all are doing is not important, and I understand the importance of every department and how every department plays a role for what the other department does, because I understand that we are an organization that one can't do its job without the other. I think that this may be a good time to maybe add in the budget to bring our DEI consultant back to explain to the board, or maybe give more explanation to the board on equity and what inclusivity means, so that we can continue to have meaningful, impactful conversations that will ensure that our staff knows that we understand and appreciate the work that they do, that they all do every day. Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
And listening to the discussion, I do agree that the statement is not being said that the work of each department is not important. However, we do understand that the urgency right now to fill the positions that are out there for public works, for our fire department, and for our police department. If we have positions that are out there right now that are not being filled because our compensation, our salaries are not competitive, we have to do something about it. So I do agree that at this time, those are the focus groups, and it's not to take away from others. But I would like to go forward with making sure that we bring their salaries up, that they're at a competitive rate, to bring more applicants in so that these services can be taken care of and our citizens are safe. And then go back further later on and look at what that might mean to do an increase for our other employees.
I have one more question here.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Ty, could you give us, and I know we may have talked about this and we've talked about this several times, but as we look at this and we look at fire, police, and public works, I would be interested to know what departments outside of fire and police are struggling to fill their positions. Because as we're talking about compression, bringing people up, hiring, I think we need to look at, since we're looking at it, if we're having departments that aren't struggling to hire or to bring in. And then we also need to look at pay grades, because if we do the increase, will that take people out of the pay grades or the pay salaries that we currently have in place? Because that also is something that we will have to adjust as well. Is that correct? Thank you.
I don't have the specific data on hard to fill positions.
The only department I'm aware of currently that's struggling is police. I think fire doesn't have any vacancies right now. Now, it remains to be seen what will happen with the new ones come July 1. I don't know if Chris could speak to it. I don't know what the enrollment for the Career in a Year program is looking like, the recruitment process. I don't know how many they have, but Chris could speak to it better. I don't think they have any vacancies right now or struggling too much. I think planning has had some issues filling positions and losing people to more competitive pay. To speak to the other ones.
So the career of the year, we do not have applicant numbers as of yet. That closes this week. So after this week, we'll begin to get some of those counts back. In regards, we do not have any empty positions currently. There are the 3 additional firefighter positions in the budget. The only comment I'll forecast a little bit, historically, we have hired most of our employees from other counties because we're not competitive within Wake County. So we would hire from, I think the majority of our last employees were hired from Nash County. Unfortunately, Nash, that being Rocky Mount, Nashville, and all those, have all increased their salaries significantly. So I think that's going to make a challenge. That's our pool we've been pulling from. So as we recruit this next time, I think we will have greater challenges than we've ever seen because we won't be able to attract like we have in the past.
Good deal. Thank you, Chief.
So, Chief, one quick question, Chief, before you leave. Currently, I think your starting salary is 47.1, is that correct?
That is correct.
So with this increase, will that make us more a player in the field of gaining, be more?
Diversity?
I'm sorry?
Were you going to say diversity?
Diversity as well as just bringing in new recruits as well, kind of make us more competitive in the field of firefighters.
Yes, most definitely. Ms. Markland has shown me what that increase would be, and that definitely puts us, those at that market you're discussing, puts us more competitive with some of the other departments in our area. So we're definitely come to the table much better than we would at our current starting salary.
All right, thank you.
If I could just jump in quickly, I know that Winston-Salem, High Point, are about the salary that our firefighters make, and they are significantly larger cities. So again, I think that we do well with fire. But what I'm hearing from the fire chief and also from our public works director is that you don't have vacancies in those departments. But where we're struggling is with police. So it goes back to making sure that what we do here is not just about the positions as much as making the positions competitive to be able to attract. But I think if Zebulon is saying that we're paying people in the fire department like High Point or Winston is paying them, that's pretty solid. And then we just have to look at those other departments. I'm a planner by training, and I can tell you right now, if I were here, I won't be able to hire a planner into your planning department because of the payment and the salaries. Because that's what I've spent a significant part of my career doing. And I think it's the same thing with your Parks and Rec department. I'll be very honest with you. The Parks and Rec department in Greensboro is significantly high. And the same thing here. Why is that? The reason because Greensboro is doing the same thing as Zebulon has done, has significantly invested every budget year in its parks and recreation amenities. And when you do, you definitely have to increase the number of staff, whether full-time or part-time. I think Greensboro has done that year after year, invest in its parks and recreation amenities. I think Zebulon has been doing that as well. And the more you do, when I look in the budget has over $2 million in parks and recreation, I believe. And with that has to come the adequate amount of people to actually implement some of what you have in there, whether they be contractors or they be part-timers or they be full-timers. Not saying that public safety is not important? Absolutely. I believe probably more than anyone that our police department should be paid very well, and it starts with the starting salaries. What I am just putting in front of you is that once you touch one, it just creates a ripple effect. And I know that we can say the next city manager will come and fix it, but I can tell you that he or she is also going to sit here and probably will be telling you the same thing that I am saying right now, that he's going to find it difficult, or she is going to find it difficult to fill those positions because they have to compete. And if the person comes in September or October and people have chosen to go elsewhere, then it will be like starting all over again. So just kind of something to think about. And as we have these conversations, of course, be mindful that there is a tax rate that you still have to consider in all of these conversations too. And that tax rate, unless you want it to stay the way it is not necessarily going to address everything in front of you unless it goes beyond what it is today.
Yeah, no, I think that you're absolutely correct, and I would like to keep our current tax rate. And so my thought is that the 3 fire positions, of course, we're going to need those as we build out our fire department and as we answer increased calls. The fire admin, the stormwater engineer, and the public works project manager, those are the ones that I would like to fill in this budget, with any additional positions being discussed once we get a permanent town manager in place.
Gotcha. I agree with that. Those are the actual positions where we're at. Everything we can assess once we get a full-time town manager.
So we're saying those are the only positions that we're going to consider, not the total amount of positions here?
That is correct.
So I'm still not clear on what you're saying.
You're the only one side.
I'm just kind of confused. Are we picking positions, or are we just talking about compensation?
Looks like we're picking positions now.
I'm not clear on what we're trying to do, so we can at least know where the budget should be. That's really my main objective.
What do you need clarification on?
Well, last week we started with, and I actually thought we had an agreement on this last week. 10% focus pay increase to police, fire, and public works, even though it was reluctant agreement, but there was a 10% focused pay targeting those 3 departments, 3% to all employees, and then 5% merit for all employees. That's where I believe we ended last week. And I said we were going to come back to you with what that does to your tax rate. What that does to the tax rate is that it takes the tax rate to 58 and 80.
Which is an increase of our tax rate.
Yes, but that's not the only thing. I said that will also result in compression. And that additional funds to address compression will be $300,000. So I need to know from you whether that's because that's really going to impact what ends up being your tax rate. So are we saying 10% for certain employees, 3% for, I just need to know what we're doing, because that will help us to be able to figure out what that tax rate will be ultimately. That's what I need from you.
Okay. So again, yes, 10% for public works, the fire department, and the police department.
Does that include the department head?
Yes, including department heads.
If we do that, bear in mind, that will affect the tax rate, because what we brought to you was different. Yeah.
We will not be funding some of these other positions which will in fact decrease the tax rate.
So no 3% to other employees, no 5% merit?
No, the 3% and the 5%, knowing that it was not indeed 5% that we've had for the past 10 years, but 3% and 5%, which is an increase of 8% for the remainder of the employees.
But you're also talking about reducing some of these positions.
Right. We'll fund these.
Which positions are we not funding?
That's a good question. Which positions are we not funding?
Budget analyst, transportation planner 2.
Okay,
We're keeping in the project manager.
okay,
You're taking out all the police detective and the police positions until we get a permanent town manager. Let them assess accordingly. You're leaving in the 3 firefighters. You're leaving in the office assistant. Leaving in the storm manager, your program coordinator, and you're taking away the park maintenance technician and the park facility worker.
What were the last 3?
Is that a consensus among the board?
Bobby had a
Commissioner?
question on the last 3 positions.
What were the last 3 again?
You're taking out the park maintenance technician and the parking facilities worker.
The 3 police, the detective and 2 watch commanders?
Correct, until she fills those positions that she currently has out.
And the budget analyst and transportation planner. Did you also mention those?
Correct, taking them out.
Any discussion on those, removal of those positions?
I will state that I do not agree.
Commissioner Harrison?
I don't have a statement. I think, I do agree with taking out positions that we have not already filled, that we can't fill in departments that we're struggling to fill. I do agree with that. I don't agree with taking out the things that we need for Parks and Rec, because our Parks and Rec are growing and they have the most programs and the most programming things and master plan projects moving forward. So while there may be people that are doing similar things to what these positions are, they're not doing the exact same things, and I know that they wouldn't be doing the exact same things with our largely growing town. So, but, the pleasure of the board. And I also, everything else I'm fine with with reassessing when we have a permanent person in. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Davis?
Those for Parks and Rec, was all 3 removed, or were we keeping the program coordinator?
We removed 2, keeping 1.
That's what I thought. Okay, clarification, just wanted to make sure.
So the program coordinator is for, that with Park and Rec?
That's Parks and Rec.
Yes, folks.
I'm taking that one out as well. Correct. From me. That's just my opinion, Is that the pleasure of the board? I'm sorry?
Left in before you said take it out.
Correct.
also.
I'm
overlooked it.
fine with leaving.
I think we should leave the program
Leaving
coordinator.
it? I'm fine with that.
All right, so we'll leave the program manager for the Parks and Rec.
So we're looking at only adding 6 positions? That's what I'm looking at?
No, I have 7. I have the project manager for Public Works, the program manager for Parks and Rec, the stormwater position for Public Works, the fire admin, and the 3 firefighters.
So that is a total of 7?
Yeah,
That is a
7.
total of 7.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7.
Oh, project, okay, program coordinator.
Even program
Okay.
coordinator in, yes.
Okay.
And then, for me, keeping the tax rate at the current tax rate, which is 57.5. That will put some funding into general funds, but that will help us, once the town manager is hired, to assess these other positions and bring them back before us.
So 10% for department heads and staff in fire, public works, and police. And readdressing the compression study once a new town manager's on.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Do we know what that would look like, Bobby?
All right, so, okay, so 10%, what about directors in those?
For the directors of Public Works, the fire department, and the police department. 10% for the staff in Public Works, the police department, the fire department. Remaining staff receives their 3% that was part of the original budget. In addition, there is up to the 5% merit that was included in the originally presented budget.
I want to take a 5-minute recess till he gets those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Dean?
Just so to recap, and then we'll give you where we are. If you look again at the spreadsheet that you have in front of you, the admin assistant to the board is removed. Pedestrian bridge replacement is removed. The town hall and police reorganization is removed. We'll create a different line item for 2 cubicles at 15,000. We removed the 50,000 for the second floor renovation and container. We removed the $1.4 million for splash pad. We take that out. We'll keep the dugout shades at 30,000. We'll take out the compression cost of 300. We'll take that out. We will include the chiefs and the director for police, fire, and public works at 10%, 3% to employees, and 5% merit. We will add a pay equity and adjustment study for 10,000. The parade cost stays at 35. Jewel Street Park bathrooms stay at 500,000. And then we're taking out 7 positions: the budget analyst, the transportation planner, the police detective, 2 watch commanders, park maintenance technician, parks and facilities worker. All of those should get us to a tax rate of 57 and 70.
57.
0.7,
That's the current rate?
7.
57.5.
By taking out by eliminating those positions, and also the fact that we are taking out the splash pad considerations, we should be able to keep the tax rate at 57.5 though, correct?
Well, the splash pad, those were funded through fund balance and the rec impact fee. So they wouldn't necessarily be affected by the tax rate wouldn't be affected by removal of the splash pad.
Just a quick question. With the merit, 3% across the board, 5% merit, the 5% merit will also be those that are getting the 10% pay increase will also be eligible for the 5% merit? So 15%? Okay, thank you.
So we'll still looking at a tax increase of, what's that? Point something?
2, roughly.
0.3, right?
57.50 to 57.7.
Okay.
Questions, comments, discussion?
The only other thing that I would like to discuss is making sure that the $1,050,000 for Parks and Rec acquisition, that none of that money gets spent until after we have a new town manager in place and we have a plan in motion for how that's to be addressed. And so if that is something that, because we're just talking about budget right now, and that is a potential policy adjustment, if we cannot ensure that those purchases won't be made until after the new town manager is in place, I would like to remove that money as well, and we can put it back in once the new town manager is installed. All of that money, with the exception of $50,000, comes from our Parks and Rec impact fee. So it really does not make a bottom line general fund big difference. Thoughts?
Will that increase, impact the tax increase? Or you just,
Well,
you
the
just,
$50,000 is something separate, but that is
Okay.
coming out of CIP.
yeah. So the discussion now is about the .2 tax increase for what we talked about.
Well, I would like no tax increase. I think that .2 is a lot more manageable than some of the other options that we had on the table prior. And while it's uncomfortable, I think that it's a stretch that is not out of the realm of good decision-making.
Commissioner Miles?
No comments at this time.
Do you agree or disagree with
As
what?
far as which part?
As far as the tax rate going from 575 to
Of course.
577?
Of course, I agree with that.
Okay, you agree with that? Okay.
Commissioner Davis?
I'm fine.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Commissioner,
What am I agreeing to?
Tax rate.
to the tax rate, the increase of .2?
That's fine.
Commissioner Harrison?
I think that we are going to have to increase taxes at some point this year, next year. We're going to have to increase taxes. We're a growing town with positions that we need, with programs that we need, with resources that are still needed. We're going to have to increase taxes. We are not increasing taxes just for citizens. We are increasing taxes for ourselves too. We are going to have to increase taxes. I'm grateful for a board that does not want to be hasty in increasing taxes, but the fact remains that in order to keep up, to be progressive, to continue to be this amazing town, growing the way that we are growing, we are going to have to increase taxes. And I don't want our board to, shy away from it because it's not, good optics, but just to understand that at the end of the day, we will, at some point, we're going to have to increase them. So that's my comment. And yes, I'm in agreement with the consensus of the board.
Any other comments, questions? So would you mind repeating that again? What we just discussed in consensus of the .2 increase?
First, clarification, do we say to remove the land acquisition?
No,
The $1,050,000, is that right?
No, I think we're just saying
No.
don't spend any money from it. I'm sorry, Mayor.
yeah, I think that was just saying wait until we get a permanent manager before we move forward with any of those funds from the Parks and Rec studies. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the other one is the prior comment statement on the reduction in the positions and the 10% across the boards, and the 3% and the 5% merit, and the .2 tax increase.
All right, got it.
Do you have what you need?
I do, yeah.
So, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to adopt?
I'd make a motion to adopt the FY25 budget as amended with a tax rate of .577.
Second. Oh, were we ready for a second?
There's a motion and a second. Discussion?
I think right here, before we vote,
Go ahead.
it's important that we express to staff that we do understand the importance of each and every position, that is taking consideration when we're doing it, that I know that one part can't operate without the other. So I leave that statement on the table saying that every staff member is important to the town of Zebulon, and I appreciate everything that is done for the town of Zebulon.
Agreed.
Any other comments?
Yes, I am happy to go ahead and get this budget passed. Want to make sure that it is clearly stated that we have 3 departments that are eligible for a 15% pay increase, while the remainder of our departments are at 8%. Want to make sure that that is clearly
No,
said.
that's not correct.
5%, 3 and 5 is 8.
But the 5% is merit, so that's going to be determined by the department.
So they
heads.
have the potential, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me add that word.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, comments? We'll roll vote. Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Opposed?
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for your hard work getting this accomplished.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I make a motion to go in